I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the census. It really is important to all of us. Bi-State writes a lot of grants, and I think most of you, any of you have dealt with grants before, or state or local or federal funds know that almost all grants are somehow related to how many people we have. We almost always are asked who's going to be impacted by the grant that we're writing and how many people are going to be impacted, and a little bit about their demographics. And that's what the census is all about, is giving us that information. I had someone recently mentioned to me, a friend of mine mentioned to me, oh, the census is about taxes. It's out, so we'll get taxed more. That's not the right answer at all. In fact, that's wrong. It means we get our taxes back. And that is why we want everyone to be counted, because the more we make sure that the population is accurate for our communities, all of our communities, and all the different types of things that we do in our communities to help support our communities, it means we get our taxes back. So the information that I'm presenting is actually from the Chicago region of the Census Bureau. And the director of the Census Bureau in Chicago, her name is Marilyn Sanders. They're kind enough to let me use their PowerPoints. So by state, several of our staff have been using their PowerPoints as outreach materials. And in fact, the staff of the Chicago region were even here doing a couple trainings earlier this year. So we've been doing some trainings on how to form a complete count committee or how to get engaged and help with accounts since earlier this year, about March this year. And we all feel that it's really, really important. And now our boots are on the ground because April 1st, 2020 is Census Day. So this is a message from her, and she does say she'll take any calls. And I do have to say that our work with the Census Bureau, Bi-State's work, and some of the community partners we've been working with, I can honestly say that the Chicago region office is very supportive and very responsive. If we put a question in, we're going to hear usually within an answer back within 24 hours, unless they're busy, usually doing trainings and out and about in a 6-state area. So the Chicago region serves Iowa and Illinois and 4 other states. So they're pretty busy right now. And the goal is that we count everyone once and in the right place. That's the bottom line. That's as simple as it gets. And the other thing is, and many of you, I'm sure, have heard this, and it's where some concerns lie, is that there will be new opportunity to answer the census in a different way. You'll be able to answer the census on the internet or on your mobile device if it has those capabilities, or you will be able to still request a paper copy if you've not received one already and answer it in paper. If you want to do it the good old-fashioned way, you can do it the good old-fashioned way. And you can actually call and answer it on the phone. But they'll have to identify who you are. They want to make sure that place of residence is where the answers are coming from. So what will happen is you'll receive a communication that gives you a unique identifier, and that's for your residence, whatever your residence is, of an apartment, a single-family home, a mobile home, whatever your residence is, and then you will answer it. The census is available in almost any language. These are all the languages, and the ones that are in are bolded. It's available even right away. And then the others you can request, and they can create them for you. So those are available. And I guess I should mention that if you have something you need, there's some handouts here that are part of the PowerPoint, and then there's some handouts here that are educational materials, and they even have a little bit of swag. So for instance, if we were having this event and Jody said, hey Denise, I want everyone to have water bottles who comes. Then if I knew ahead enough, I could call upon the Census Bureau and get some swag. And they've had different kinds of swag, and it's ever changing. They have a warehouse. So they had, lip balm. They have, I think they have pens. They've had some other items, some interesting items. So if you're interested in that kind of thing and you're actually having an event, and you have an estimated number of people who are coming to that event, you can request that. It would be best if you knew 2 months from now you're having an event, that you make that request now. And later on in the presentation, I'll show you who that request would be made to. The bottom line about all this is it's in our Constitution that every 10 years we will do a head count in our country of everyone who's residing in our country at that time. That's as simple as it gets. And then what we are doing is narrowing information down. And for me, as a planner, this is really important information. I know for local governments, what we get down to is we get the geography or the population count, for instance, for the city of Muscatine or any other local government here in Muscatine County, for instance. We get the population count of the county, but we also can narrow that down to census tracts and even smaller pieces, census blocks. And maybe some of you, and then of course it does then record our population here and certainly our population in our state. And it will be an indicator of what our congressional districts will be and how many representatives we will have. So very important. And in fact, I know because I work with 3 counties in Illinois, that in Illinois, there is already a likelihood they're going to lose 1 district. And so that's, of course, concerning because then they have less voice in our nation's capital. And then Title 13 of the United States Code says that every respondent is protected and that it's a felony for a census worker to disclose any information about an individual answer at an individual location. And that penalty can be up to 5 years in prison and or $250,000. So there's no way that's going to happen. And so that the census workers are subject to this. And so even a temporary census worker, which by the way, they are trying to hire temporary census workers and they pay them, it's somewhere between $20 and $21 an hour. So if you have someone who wants a little extra money, wants to work on the weekend, wants to work on the evenings, you get to choose your hours. And they actually will need census workers even after April. Then if you go to census.gov, you will find that there's an opportunity to sign up to actually work for the census. So the census data, obviously we've mentioned, it's used for programming of federal dollars. $675 billion annually is used for programming of federal dollars. And then you have a handout, and I'm not sure if I kept, it's the handout that looks, let me show you, this one. It tells you how many dollars are actually in Iowa. So it looks like this. It has a little shape of the state of Iowa in the right corner. And it's over $8 billion, almost $9 billion in federal dollars just in the state of Iowa. And it lists all the types of programs, domestic financial assistance, tax credit programs, procurement programs, all different kinds of programs. And then on the back, it actually lists some of those grants and the federal programs. And one of the ones I work with the most is transportation planning and road planning, and where the federal dollars that the state of Iowa and Muscatine County spend dollars, that it's all based on that kind of thing. And also transit dollars. So very, very important. And a lot of the free and reduced lunch programs, the school programs, all are based off of census population. So that's one reason why it's so important to make sure that we get an accurate count. One of the things that they're doing, and this is and you have a copy of this also on your tables. It says CPEP at the top, but it's Community Partnership and Engagement. And what that is these census workers they hired early on to help to be there and be boots on the ground for the Census Bureau, and they live somewhere here locally within the region. And we have 2 living in the Quad City area, and they are Shelby Newberry and Teresa Fletcher. And they are the people you would contact. I think Shelby's the one who actually you would contact. For instance, I'm having an event I need 75 water bottles, or what other swag do you have? Shelby would be that person. If you have any questions about programs or need some questions answered, either Shelby or Teresa Fletcher can answer those questions. Both are obviously trying to help get the information out about the census, and so those would be two local contacts here in our region within the two-county area that could help you out if you have any questions. And they've been good to engage with. We, by state, have worked with them frequently since the summer. And they were engaged, they were hired approximately late spring, early summer. So you also have this operational timeline, because I know you would not be able to see it here, but you have it in front of you. And it basically shows you when Census Day is, and it suggests things that you should be doing. And it mentions what Jody mentioned, that they have begun enumeration in Alaska, because Alaska is so remote. It's definitely, and then they talk about some of the other items that they're going to be doing. And any time along here is not too early, and frankly, maybe not too late either, only past April 1st, and even then it's not absolutely too late, to start engaging folks and talking to folks about what kinds of things could we do to make sure everyone answers the census, make people comfortable about answering the census. So there is a big question about group quarters. In the Quad Cities, we have group quarters because we have the Rock Island Arsenal. There's folks who live on the Arsenal. We have a detention facility in East Moline, Illinois. We have St. Ambrose College. We have Augustana College. I don't think you have any residential units here. You do here? That's here on the campus? Oh, that's cool. Back when I did, they didn't. Well, so then what would happen there is that the census isn't going to go to each individual unit. It's going to go to whoever the contact is. It's usually the director or that unit of the program, and sometimes the president of the college or whoever, or the director of the prison or whoever, and that they're going to give the count for April 1st. They're going to say, this is how many people are living here on April 1st. So that nursing homes would be the same. Not independent living, but nursing homes. So independent living would be one of those ones that you'd want to make sure and reach out to, because some of those folks might not be thinking, oh, I should be answering the census. They might, I'm thinking of some, senior kind of housing areas, but but fairly independent. They're not going to be necessarily thinking about the census, and that's one of the groups that we definitely would want to reach out to. So then there's another activity, a focus, and it's called service-based enumeration, and that's in our shelters and soup kitchens and emergency shelters, because some people will be actually in those shelters, living in those areas on April 1st. So we do reach out, and they have a specific way that the enumerators go in and they say on that day, how many people do you have here? How many people do you estimate you have here? Then they also do non-sheltered outdoor, and I remember this in 2010. I remember in the Quad Cities, there were some groups that worked with the enumerators, folks who worked for not-for-profits and service organizations who helped the enumerators find those locations where we know, because we live there, where the people live and who are homeless, and specific locations like under bridges, in vacant buildings, and that type of thing, or in certain parts of parks and that type of thing. So we know where those areas are. We can identify them for the enumerators, and we can count them, because we do. We want to count those folks too. And then there's the transient folks. There are folks, and this is happening more and more, I think, with some folks who are even retiring. They actually buy an RV, and that's what they live in. And depending on where they're at on April 1st, that's where they live. And so if they're really truly transient, then you would want to go and check that out at some of our campgrounds and our hotels and motels where folks are actually living, and maybe some other types of things like marinas. And I don't think we have any racetracks, that type of thing here in this part of Iowa where folks live. But I definitely, traveling through Iowa even along the campgrounds, I see folks in campgrounds. And I know on the Illinois side of the river, we work with Mercer County and New Boston in Illinois City. There are people who live in the New Boston campground all year round. And so that person, those people, should be counted. So these are referencing back to those other types of things, but these are the timelines of when they're going to actually do everything. And they're actually, when they talk about operation, what they're doing is getting ready for the onset. So they're going to find the right people who can give them information about how to get to the general, making sure they have the right contact at the general quarters, making sure they have the right contact for people who haven't been, who are living in a homeless area outdoors, and then people who are in soup kitchens or that type of thing. So they start the operation by making sure they have the right contact and getting set and letting the folks know who operate those facilities. And then they conduct the operation at the end of March and into really even they keep tracking it through the month of April. So the census doesn't stop on April. And if it's determined that we've missed someone, they'll keep making those contacts. So it sounds like you guys have been invited to be part of the complete, not yet. Well, a complete count committee is basically a group of people representing all different sectors and parts of your community. It could be not-for-profits, it could be education, it could be faith-based, it could be local government, it could be schools, and that's and you all get together, you brainstorm about ways each of you can outreach into the folks you serve and make sure they count and make sure they are counted and they have been answering the census and feel comfortable answering the census, that it truly is confidential and that it's safe to answer. And because that's really, they'll trust you much more than they're going to trust Jody, because Jody works for the city and they're going to look at her as government. I work for all the cities, so I'm going to look like government. They're going to trust you more than they're going to trust us. And that's what we need. We need you to reach out to them. And then you have a copy of this also on your, because again, it's hard to read, but this gives you all kinds of ideas of folks that could help you really reach out. For instance, one of the things they mention is health department here. Well, we were just doing a brainstorming session in Scott County a couple weeks ago, and the Scott County Administration Office and Planning Office was saying, oh, you know what? People come in to get their DHS checks at this counter here in Scott County. We could have information about the census and what it's going to look like and even a sample census for them, and they could pick it up when they get their DHS checks, and it would be a way of kind of just informing folks, hey, remember to answer the census. Oh, and by the way, guess what? The DHS money comes from population counts and DHS, and if the two go together, very closely go together. So kind of encouraging those folks that's why you want to answer the census. Even in those campgrounds, if you think about it, most recreation dollars are grant dollars. Lots of times they're competitive dollars, but they're almost all based on population. Resource enhancement dollars here in the state of Iowa called REAP, based on population, how much you as a community can apply for. So it's all very important. And again, they mentioned libraries. Libraries is a great place to make a computer available if people want to answer online. Schools, definitely. Backpack programs, put something in the backpack. Then, of course, we've already mentioned churches. Businesses, too. I'm hearing that one of our credit unions in the Quad Cities is going to make computers available at all their offices on both sides of the river, so that folks, who, if they want to answer the census, can do that, and just encourage people to answer the census at the credit union. So what you do, the best way to reach people is to do it maybe in your existing rallies. And I know that some of our, for instance, our Independent Living Center in the Quad Cities has a winter festival. Well, they're going to have a census table. They're going to talk about how important it is and how dollars that assist folks with abilities, needs, come from census dollars. So they're going to have those at festivals. Our Hispanic Chamber is going to have, has already had a couple census tables, and they're going to continue to do that at upcoming events that they already have. Or you could even hold a special event, a special rally, and invite folks and invite them and discuss the census. Churches could just announce, there's nothing political about this, it's just answering the census, and it's important to all of us. So a church, you know, a pastor, a priest, a rabbi could say at the end of service, remember this month is, you know, in the month of March, this month is the month you're going to start getting the paperwork from the census. Please answer. It's important to all of us and your neighbors and our whole congregation. And really what you do, if you agree to do it, but what you really do is you help build trust. Again, I mentioned this before, but you're the trusted neighbor, you're the trusted church, you're the trusted school, you're the trusted service organization that everyone goes to. And they are going to believe you. And I even heard there's a neighborhood in the Quad Cities, the Florciente district. It's almost all Spanish speaking. And what they're going to do is have everyone they know who answers the census, and especially if they're maybe a leader in the community or well respected in the community, tie a yellow ribbon around their mailbox or a tree in their front yard. And it says, and it implies that means they answered the census. And all of a sudden they'll say, oh, well, they answered the census and they answered the census. I guess I can answer the census. And so those kinds of things, those outward things, are really, really what's important for the community outreach committees. The other thing is, immigrants. We have quite a few immigrants in the Quad City area. We have Vietnamese, quite a few. Well, we have more than 22 different languages at some of our schools, at our schools in Scott County and Rock Island County. So really, really important to try to get some of that cross-sector representation on your complete count committee. And bring together everyone to talk about how to get to the hard to reach. Senior living centers, the folks who do know the seniors and work with them, maybe caseworkers, meal site workers. Ask them, hey, what's the best way to get to really get to the seniors and make sure they understand it's important, it's safe, that kind of thing. You can really engage. You each have some good ideas for your hard to count population. Last census, children were the most undercounted piece. So preschools, again, the schools, the elementary K through 12 schools, getting that out to those folks, daycare workers, making sure they all are communicating. The WIC programs help home-based daycare and daycare centers. Well, those are all based on census dollars, so we really, and numbers that are accurate. So we really do need to think about ways we can engage those we serve and to encourage them to answer the census. You could create subcommittees in your little group in your area. That you could create an education subcommittee, a church subcommittee, or you can each go out and do. And I encourage you to do either or both. You cannot communicate too much about answering the census. Remember that one less person is approximately $1,500 to $1,700 less money per person per year for 10 years. Do you really want to give up that kind of money? And then you add that into all your undercounts. You don't want to. And so we really do want to have an accurate count. I've mentioned the trusted voices. If there are communities where you know, hey, everyone listens to so-and-so, if this person gets behind it, they're just going to be all in. Well, grab that person and say, hey, will you come to the rally, or will you sit behind the table during our little, free donuts and coffee at church, because everyone looks up to you. And if you say, hey, answer the census, then our job is done. So here's a bigger list of the hard-to-count populations. I mentioned children, especially under 5 years old. You do count infants. A person should always count an infant. College students, farm workers, farmers, rural people, very, very independent. They don't think they need to answer the census, but it's very important to answer the census. They need roads to get their product in and out, and the way we get our money for our roads and our counties get our money for our roads is to have good counts. Immigrants we've already mentioned. We've mentioned folks with different languages. Millennials, they forget. Both my daughters live in apartments, and I'll have to remind them. I know I'll have to remind them. I highly doubt they're going to answer it in one's 28 and one's 31. So who knows, This is, and I did make, I think, a copy of a document, hopefully. Yes, let me show you what it looks like. This document is a website where you can actually find out how well or how not well things were counted in 2010 for certain parts. So if you go to the website, it's pretty easy to drill down to a community. It really, you just click, and it shows you here. You go to census.gov and then Census Explorer 2010 rate map. It shows you the rate of response. And what that means is people who responded without someone knocking on their door 5 times. So that's why, and the more they respond right away, that's the other thing. A lot of people really don't want anyone to knock on their door. Okay, answer the census, get it over with. Go to a computer. Don't even call or answer the paper. Go to a computer with a different IP address. Answer the census, get it over with. Then you're truly, you truly are keeping it pretty confidential if you go to a library computer and answer the census. So there's different ways of communicating this to different parts of our population. This is another type of map that identifies the hard-to-survey areas. And it also drills down a lot to the social and economic information about those areas. Kind of tells you, helps you determine why. And then this is the comparison. This is the handout I gave you so that you would have reference to both of those URLs below there and how to read those. I've already given you an activity timeline. This is just another one, and it does mention that people start engaging really right now. And here's your suggested next steps. Choose an official within your organization. It doesn't have to be an elected official. So in your organization, if you're a school, it might be your principal, or it could be your parent-teacher association president, and have them help recruit and come up with ideas, and then just do what you need to do at that school even. And each of you, if you did that in your organizations or your world, so to speak, will make a huge difference in the count. You could organize subcommittees if you find that you need some, but you could also just, like I said, if you're just thinking about your church, then do everything in your church that you can think of, and you don't need to get too complicated on it. Just do that. You might want to mention some of these hard to count. I'm happy to share a PDF of this PowerPoint if anyone would like to have that information and if it would help you communicate to your organizations. And then remember that there will be address canvassing. But right now, a regular home in Muscatine that doesn't have a P.O. box, is going to get a letter. They're going to get a letter sometime in mid-March, and it will invite them to answer the census, and it will give them their unique identifier. Then if they don't do anything with that, they'll get another communication. We're trying to learn if that's going to be a letter or a postcard. And then if they don't do anything with that, then they will get a third communication near the end of March that will include a paper copy of the census. If they don't do that, then they will start probably getting the door knocking after that in April. So it's really important to, the sooner you answer the census, the less enumerators will need to do, but also the less likely anyone will be knocking on your door. And some folks in some neighborhoods don't like to see anyone walking down the neighborhood. That's a key point. This year, this census, this decennial, they're not wearing any census t-shirts, at least thus far. So what they are wearing is a badge that has an official census tag on it, and then they're also wearing, or they're also carrying a laptop that has official census information on it, so like the logo and everything taped to it. So those are two things, and sometimes they might be carrying a bag of additional information like paperwork, and it will say census on it. So that's the way you identify a census worker. If you ever have concerns, you can contact the Census Bureau in Chicago, and you can find out, and they actually can find out if that's a real census worker, if you ever have a concern. Thus far, I've had 2 or 3 elected officials contact me to see if I could find out if a census worker who was walking around getting initial addresses this summer. And I was able to find out that they were census workers. It was just folks see people walking down the street and they wonder, okay, what's going on? Why are they trying to do this? And they were real census workers, and we were able to identify them. But that can happen too. So it's very important for your police departments and your folks like that too, to understand when you're going to start seeing your neighborhood groups, when you're going to start seeing folks walking down your street, which is normally going to be near the end, near the April timeframe and on down, because right now they're going to start doing those mailings. Let's see. There was one thing I wanted to mention. I guess I'll take some questions. There was one thing I'm trying to remember, but I'd be happy to take some questions. And if I don't have the answer, because I'm not the Census Bureau, but Bi-State works with census data literally every day. So we're always involved in the decennial census and helping to get an accurate count. I'm happy to track down that question from the Chicago region and get it back to you as soon as possible. Oh, I know one thing. I don't know if any of you are from just other parts of Muscatine County and not necessarily the city of Muscatine, but in West Liberty, for instance, because it's 50% Hispanic, they're going to get paper immediately, and they're going to get English and Spanish every household, because 50% is Spanish. They already know, but they don't know for sure which house. So everyone in West Liberty is going to get a paper form English and a paper form Spanish. So, yes?
So for my own benefit, I have 2 children in college. One lives with me and one lives in a dorm. So do I count both of them, or do they count themselves?
Technically, the one who lives with you, you count, and the one who lives in the dorm should be counted by that college.
Okay.
A question about when you talked about doing it on the computer,
Mm-hmm.
you said a different IP address, but then you said go to the library. So if lots of people go to the library, they'll end up with the same IP.
Right, that doesn't matter.
Okay.
But what I mean is, it's not your home IP.
Okay.
So you even maintain even additional, if there's someone who's really worried about Big Brother, okay, let's get out of my house. Let's go to someone else's computer, like the credit unions or the libraries. Let's answer the census and get it all over with. I mean, that would be like the ultimate way of staying incognito. And that's why, that's one of the things we've thought about, telling folks who feel comfortable answering it on a computer. Not everyone's going to feel comfortable doing that. I'm not even sure I would feel comfortable doing that. I'd rather do the paper copy, but,
But if you have people who aren't computer
right, oriented.
savvy as much, like taxes, we've
Right.
People come to a central place and
Yeah.
know that somebody's there to help them
Right, right.
technically.
Right, right. Yeah, so yes, if you have someone who's willing to actually man a location too and just answer general questions about, oh yeah, this is the way you would answer this question or that question, like the question I just got, well then that's exactly right. There are some confusing things about race. My understanding is a little controversy about there's not enough drill down on the race. I think, I forget if that's, it may be compacting Asians too much, or maybe Middle Eastern folks a little bit too much. And so I've heard some stuff like that, but they're not likely to change the form, because you got the form right there, so that I brought. So they're not likely to change that. And there is no question about, if there's 9 questions, so there's no question about whether you're a citizen or not. It's just 9 questions. And it will be really easy to do and really fast to do if there's only one person living in the home. You are actually supposed to be able to answer it on your phone if you wanted to. And if it's only one of you, that's probably for the individual who lives alone, that's probably the way they'll probably answer. Well, if you ever have any questions, you certainly can get a hold of Jody, and I will track anything down or get back, and she can loop me with you, and then we'll track it down. We have 2 or 3 staff at Bi-State working on these kinds of issues, helping, attending some of the Complete Count Committee meetings, and continuing with training. So we're happy to get you any information that you need.